Okay, so in this micro lesson, we're going to talk about playing the chord changes. And I'm going to give you a simple formula and a way to visualize this so that once you can see this on the fretboard, you're going to be able to do this. By the end of this video, my goal for you is for you to be able to just sit down and start playing the changes without a jam track, without any chords underneath you, just to be able to start playing a lead that sounds like something on its own. And that's one of the trickiest things to learn how to do. When I first learned how to improvise, all I could do was stay in the key of the song. That's the alternative to playing the changes, is to just stay in the key of the song. That's where most of us go, by the way. We learn our major and minor pentatonic scale, and we can play along with the blues, and if we know the blues is in the key of G, we can just know one thing. We just have to worry about one thing, which is the key of the song. But when it comes to playing chord changes, it starts to get complicated because you have to remember what chords are going on. That's all playing the changes is, by the way. It's just changing what you're doing when you're improvising to match the chord. And what you get is a more melodic, meaningful sounding lead. So here's what we're going to work towards. Here's a little example of this. Notice when I play through this, there's not going to be any jam track. It's just a solo, but you're going to be able to tell kind of what the chords are based on what I'm playing. All right, so now let me explain what's going on there so that you can visualize this. And by the way, if you want the tab for that, what I just played, you can get that by going to activemelody.com. Just do a search for ML106, and you can go right to that lesson number and access the tab. But what I was playing there was a blues, a 1-4-5, in the key of E, 3 chords. Even though there were no chords played, I was hinting at or insinuating these chords. It was an E chord for the 1 chord, an A chord for the 4 chord, and a B or a B7 for the 5 chord. Now, I wasn't playing the chords down here. Everything that I played was up here, and it was all played between the 4th fret and the 7th fret. And so I want you, this is the first thing we're going to learn how to do, is play our 1 chord, our 4 chord, and our 5 chord in one neighborhood. So you're not jumping all over the fretboard. You've got one little region, and you're just making small adjustments to hit at the notes of those chords. So the first thing we're going to do, even if you can't play bar chords, just watch what I'm doing. So if you can play them, feel free to play along. But I'm going to play an E chord in this position, but I'm using the C shape. This is from the Cage system. So that's our 1 chord. Now, what's nice about this is right in this same neighborhood, I'm going to bar the 5th fret now, and I'm going to play the E shape, and that's going to be my 4 chord. So maybe you didn't even realize that. You've got your 1 chord using the C shape, and in the same neighborhood, you've got your 4 chord. Now, also in this neighborhood, if I bar now on the 4th fret, I'm just going to bar the first 4 strings, and I'm going to put my pinky up here on the 7th fret 1st string. I've got my 5 chord. So that's my B chord using the G shape. So the first chord was our E using the C shape, then we had our A chord using the E shape, and then we have our 5 chord, which is our B, using the G shape. Now, I've also got, actually when you play your 5 chord, it's usually it is your dominant chord, your 7 chord. So I'm going to play the 7 version of that like this, but it's really off of that same sort of shape. That's kind of like your A7 shape, actually, but that's my B7 chord. Now, that's the first thing we're going to do, is just sort of see those chords and see where they're at in this neighborhood. Now we're going to arpeggiate those chords because we need to play the notes of the chords. The only difference between an arpeggio and the chord is the arpeggio is playing the notes sort of like a scale. You're not playing them like all together, like brushing the chord. You're singling them out. So we're going to start with our pinky. And by the way, we want to line our fingers up so that our index finger is over the 4th fret, middle finger is over the 5th fret, ring fingers over the 6th, and pinkies over the 7th. As for everything we do here, each finger gets a fret and represents that fret. Okay, we're going to start with this note with our pinky, 7th fret, 5th string. And this is coming out. We're going to play our E arpeggio out of this C shape. And it looks like this. And then we're going to walk it back down. Now you've got 2 other notes down here. On the 6th string, you've got this 7th fret and 4th fret. But that's the notes of my E arpeggio in this neighborhood using the C shape. So you need to get familiar with that and just be able to play up and down that arpeggio in this neighborhood. That's first goal. The next goal is we're going to play our A arpeggio using this E shape. And we're going to start with our middle finger on the 5th fret. And then we're going to play it like this. And then walk it back down. You need to become familiar with that as well. That's your E shape arpeggio, major chord arpeggio. So now we've got our E chord and our A chord. Then we're going to look at our B chord using this G shape. In fact, I'm going to give you the dominant 7 arpeggio. So we're going to play the 1, 3, the 5 from the major scale, but we're also going to play the flat 7. So it's going to be a 4-note arpeggio. So we're going to start with our pinky on the 7th fret, 6th string. If I'm sounding too fast, I'm just trying to be concise here. You can always rewind and go back over these parts if you need to. But we're going to start down here. And we're going to play it like this. There's the flat 7. So those are our 4 notes. We're going to keep walking up. And there it is again. And then our last note is up here on the 7th fret, 1st string. So let's walk up it and back down it like this. Okay, so now we have our E arpeggio, our A arpeggio, and our B7 arpeggio all in the same neighborhood between frets 4 and 7. Now what we want to do is a little exercise to connect those arpeggios. It's going to start to sound a little bit like music. It's not going to be great music, but you're going to be able to hear what's going on. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to play up the arpeggio and down the arpeggio. It's not always going to land in the same spot, but but basically I'm going to hit 8 notes of each. So I'm going to start here. Let's see. We'll start with the 7th fret, 5th string with our pinky. That's our E note, and we're going to walk up the E arpeggio like this. Remember, it's 8 notes, so it's... Those are our 8 notes. Now from here, we're going to switch to the 4 chord, and I'm going to start from either the top of the arpeggio or down here at the bottom. So whatever's closest. Obviously, the top is closest to that last note I played. So it would be switching to this 5th fret, 1st string. So let me back up from our E. We have this. Now watch this. Those are our 8 notes from our A arpeggio using the E shape. Now from here, we're going to switch to our B7 chord. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to start from either the top or the bottom of this arpeggio. So this is the bottom. Obviously, we're closest to the bottom. So I'm going to hit that note, 7th fret, 6th string with my pinky, and I'm going to walk up the B7 arpeggio. Those are our 8 notes, and then we're going to go back to the 1 chord, to our E. And so there's the note that's closest within the arpeggio, the top of the arpeggio. And that's really it. That's the entire exercise. Let me play them all together so that and I'll play them a little quicker so that you can hear how it sort of flows together. It sounds like this. Now, if you want to keep the flow going and have 8 notes of each, you could play those. That 6th string, 7, 4, 7, and then start the whole loop over. and then it loops out perfectly. And so what you're doing there is you're playing the changes when you're doing that. Now you're just playing the arpeggio itself. It's a very literal sound. It's a literal, definition of each of those chords, but it's getting your fingers and your mind into seeing the chords and being able to hit the perfect notes. Any of those notes are perfect notes that would work when you're playing a lead. So those are your target notes, your 1, 3, and your 5 of each chord. You're playing them all over the place. It's pretty cool if you think about it that way. Now what we're going to do to make it sound more melodic is we're going to weave the major scale in between them. Just one major scale though. We're just going to play the E major scale. That's the key of the song. So, and we're going to play it off of this C shape between the 4th fret and the 7th fret. And so that's what it looks like. It starts here really on this E note down on the bottom. You need to become familiar with your major scale out of this position, this hand position, the C shape. It's pretty easy to do. I can even do it as I talk because it's so symmetrical. If you look on the 1st and 2nd string, you have 7, 5, 4, 7, 5, 4. Then you have 6, 4 on the 3rd string. And then you have 7, 6, 4, 7, 6, 4. I love how it just sort of flows, this little pattern. To me, these patterns, when they're symmetrical like this, it's so much easier to play. Now, the reason we only have to deal with one scale, even though there's 3 chords, is because of modes. And so I don't want to get into the whole mode thing, but what's happening mode-wise is, as we play that E chord over the 5 chord, for example, for our B7 chord, if I'm playing the E major scale over the B chord, I'm getting the sound of, so listen to that. Get that sound in your head, the B, and I'll play that E major scale. What you're hearing is B mixolydian, even though it's the same exact notes of your E major scale. Same thing sort of happens over the 4 chord over your A. You're playing an A Lydian mode, but that's just a label. So don't get too worried about that. Just know that what makes it sound good is landing on those notes of your chord. Same with the B chord. When it's the B time to play the B chord, you can use those notes of your major scale to sort of sprinkle in between, but you really kind of highlight or land on those notes from the arpeggio. That's it. That's how it works. So if I'm just improvising then, this is an E, right? So we're going to start with an E. I'm going to go from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, my E to my A, without a chord underneath me. So here's where I'm going with it. Now that you know where these notes are coming from, I'm going to start with the E major scale from the C shape. Hear the A, right? I went into the 3rd interval of the A. Now we're going to the 5 chord. Listen to that. I'm still playing the E major scale, but hear how your ear is telling you, your ear is tricking you. It's hearing that dominant 7, that flat 7. It's hearing mixolydian. I guess your ear is not tricking you at all. It actually is B mixolydian, but it's just a weird thing because it's the same notes as your E major scale. Back to my 1. Now what's cool is on top of that, if that's not cool enough, you can also play harmonies using these chord shapes. So if I look at strings 1 and 2 out of this C shape, I've got a harmonized 3rd. There's the bottom part of the chord. Now watch this. See, I went into the 4 chord? I'm just playing strings 2 and 3 out of the chord. I'm just kind of sliding into them to give it some flair. I can hit strings 1 and 2 because they're in that bar. Then we go to the 5 chord. I can hit just strings 1 and 2 like that. I can reach up and hit this. Get the Robert Johnson sound. And then watch this. That's a little embellishment that I talk about sometimes off of this triad. Some of you will remember that right away. If not, there's something new that you can learn, but off of this, inside of this little bar here, if I'm playing off this G shape, strings 2 and 3, I can do that, and then I can go to this shape where I've got middle finger on the 5th fret 2nd string, ring finger on the 6th fret 3rd string, and then I can slide that up. I just tried to keep it between the 4th fret and that 7th fret. I did sort of spill into the 8th fret, I suppose, for that one note. So all of that can be played as harmonies for my B chord. All right, so there's one other little simple idea that I want to add to this, a little garnish that we're going to put into this, and that is using chromatic notes. So anytime you've got a gap between two notes. Remember when we were doing these, we had like fret 7, 5, 4. Well, what about the 6th fret? You can play that note too. You just don't want to land on it, but it's a great little garnish to stick into your artwork. So check it out. So look at that. There it is again on the 2nd string. And there it is again, walking up chromatically to the 3rd interval of my A chord. So when you throw that garnish in to the harmonies and the major scale and the arpeggios, you've got basically the formula to be able to create anything you want. And you should try that now. So practice going, you know, between your arpeggios like I showed you. And then once you get comfortable and you're able to do that, start working in a more clever way of getting from like the 1 chord to the 4 chord. Instead of just playing it literal like that, just going right up the arpeggio, try something like this. So you can go. Then to the 4 chord. There's back to my E major scale. Just walking down the scale. Now we're going to go to the 5 chord. And watch this. I'm going to go just down 1. This is where your ear will start to hear this. That's the 3rd interval of my 5 chord, my B. And now from here, I'm just going to play the E major scale. Watch this, which is my B mixolydian. But I landed on the flat 7 because I'm hearing that from that chord. And I could even go. Right? And you hear that a lot in bluegrass and other styles of music. And then back to my E note, back to the 1 chord. Right? And there's my arpeggio. So here's the chromatics. You can start to hear those chords and then work in some harmonies. So all of that's just improvised, just being made up on the fly using what I just showed you there. And I hope that you can take this idea and start to piece together very simple little melodies, but start with your 1-4-5. I mean, that's where that's the root of most music anyway. And that's a great place to start. Leave a comment, let me know if this has resonated with you. I always appreciate that. And then also, if any of this is unclear or you're confused about something, leave that as well, because that helps me know what works. And if you want the tab for that little thing I played at the intro, so that you have something specific that I played, you can get that again by going to activemelody.com and do a search for ML106. All right, we'll see you in the next video.